Buenos días, buenas tardes, y buenas noches. Bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. Jay Slater Case. Third video of the day on this manic Monday, August the 3rd, I believe. And chosen background of the day today is this magnificent vessel, which, what does it say in Spanish on it? Salvamiento. Marítimo, it's the Coast Guard. Let me get my big fat head out of the way. And there is the vessel in all its glory, the Tenerife Coast Guard. We have to mention them, or rather, we have to mention the person, the anonymous person that started talking about this outfit when he said that Jay's body apparently, allegedly, was discovered on the Saturday. Not only that, he said the Saturday morning. The Saturday morning. So, in my series here on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I was ready to start talking about what I think happened on the Sunday. I still have to linger a little bit longer on the Saturday because, as one or two people rightly pointed out, we can't really just jump to Sunday without considering what the lifeguard role could have been on that Saturday. Now, for this, on my community post, I just posted a link to TikTok where you can hear, if you do TikTok, you can hear this British expat living on Tenerife talk about what he had heard about the discovery of Jay's body, what he had heard on Tenerife, that it all happened on the Saturday, not the Sunday and not the Monday. Um, and I wanted to comment on his account because there are a few things that kind of make sense, and there's a lot that doesn't make sense. And I really wish this guy had said something more or let us know who he was. But if you remember his video, he basically he was faceless, he was nameless. He just said he worked for a water sports company. We're fairly easy to find, he said. He said they worked with the Coast Guard very carefully. The Coast Guard kept them all legal or in line or something like that, he said. And he tried to convince us that he had this kind of rapport with the Tenerife Coast Guard, and that's why he might have some inside knowledge. But frustratingly, when I listened carefully to his words, yet again, with the Jay Slater case, they were words that didn't convince me he was being totally honest or he knew the whole story. So let me just read through what he said, and this should ring a bell because I'm sure you all heard this guy speak. He said, we are talking, he's talking about I think that Saturday when Jay's body, apparently was discovered. He says, we're talking to a member of the Coast Guard supervision team, and we are told on Saturday, allegedly, an anonymous tip off had been received in relation to blah, 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 Jay Slater case, something like that. Now, the pronoun here that I'm very concerned about, and I am someone that's always concerned about pronouns and how they are misused, but not in the woke sense, in the sense that it's not clear who someone is talking about. He says, we are talking to a member of the Coast Guard supervision team. Well, who is we? We's going to be this guy and someone else. Who are the other people? Is this a meeting? And so some other people can corroborate this. If it's a phone call, it really can't be we. It's this guy and the Coast Guard supervision team. So is it sitting down in a cafe? He's not specific, but he is specific twice. He says we. I'd love to know if you're listening to me, expat guy that works for a water sports company that is easy to find. Um, Contact me and you can elaborate and clarify all this. Who is the we? We're talking to a member of the Coast Guard supervision team, and we are told. I don't like that passive voice. We are told. By whom? Who is this person that's talking to you? Yeah, I know, a member of the Coast Guard supervision team, but what role or what contact, what connection would this person have to the Jay Slater case exactly? It's too vague for my liking. We are told. By whom? On Saturday, allegedly, an anonymous tip off had been received. Why allegedly? I don't understand why the allegedly in there. Either this guy in the Coast Guard supervision team knows, 100% sure, that a tip off has been given, then there's no alleged about it. He's sure. You see, just the word allegedly makes me think this expat guy relating all this isn't sure. But I mean, if the Coast Guard supervision team member is sure, he wouldn't have said allegedly. He'd have just said, yeah, we were given a tip off. Why the allegedly? An anonymous tip off had been, there we go. An anonymous tip off had been received. Passive voice. Whenever you hear the passive voice, you've got to think, why the passive voice? Had been received. Why not tell us who received it? Received by da 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 in relation to the J Slater case. So that initial statement made me think this guy doesn't have enough detail. I mean, this guy might be lying for whatever reason. I don't know why. He might be telling the truth and just doesn't know the additional details. But if he were part of that conversation with a member of the Coast Guard supervision team, he would have more details that he could give us. And then there's a bit more mystery. The guy says, I don't know what form this was in. And he's talking about the tip off. Well, why not? Why doesn't he know what form the tip off is? He's in conversation. We are talking to a member of the Coast Guard supervision team. Why doesn't he ask? Well, that's interesting. Was it a phone call? What was this tip off? In what mode of communication was it? But he doesn't ask that, or he doesn't tell us. He says, I don't know. You see, I'd have been so curious if I were talking to a member of the Coast Guard supervision team. I'd be full of questions. Oh my God, did this tip off come voice to voice on telephone call? Was it just a text? Um, don't know. And then he says, I don't know who it was received by. Again, why not? If this member of the Coast Guard supervision team is happy to tell you that Jay's body was found on the Saturday morning after a tip off, why would this Coast Guard supervision team member be shy to say who it was received by? I don't know. The headquarters in Santa Cruz de Tenerife Harbor, um, through a Coast Guard boss's phone number. How is it received? You see, because at the end of the day, we were told, were we not, that Sluggy or Chris or both contacted the Coast Guard. Well, how? This word contact. How did they contact the Coast Guard? Sluggy and Chris are on a phone saying in Spanish, hey, Coast Guard, you don't know us and you won't know us. This is anonymous, by the way. Don't try to call us back. Yeah. But we know where the body is, Jay Slater's body. So, if this anonymous tip comes from our intrepid duo, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, then how did they contact the Coast Guard? They would know the form of the contact, but the expat in Tenerife, he doesn't know. The Coast Guard supervisor team member doesn't seem to want to tell us. So again, we're shrugging our shoulders, saying, "Oh no, how real is this?" Let's give the expat a bit of benefit of the doubt here. And he says on Saturday, the whole mountain range area near Masca was closed off. Again, I don't remember reading about that or hearing about that. And then he says, I've never been to Masca. So he's never been to Masca, but he does know on that Saturday the whole mountain range was closed. How does he know that? Who's told him that? Where's he read that? Where's he heard that? Because I don't hear or see anyone else repeating that. How do you close off the whole area to Masca? He says it was closed off except to the locals. So that bus that goes from Santiago del Teide and it goes all the way to Buenavista del Norte and it passes through Masca. Is there a police officer that is controlling on that Saturday everyone that gets on the bus and he says, show me proof of residence up there? Otherwise, you can't get on the bus and go up there because it's closed off. Someone like Ophelia, what does she do? I didn't know I have to show my residence. What do you want? A water bill or some kind of utility bill to show I live there? And some poor tourists that happened to leave went down to Santiago. They didn't actually bring any evidence that they're staying up there. I mean, I find this hard to believe. It was closed off except to locals on the Saturday. But he says, oh, I've never been to Masca. It just seems odd to me. The whole mountain range near Masca was closed off. Well, that's a national park, the Taynor National Park. You can access it through footpaths. There's 101 ways to get up there. He's saying that the police have closed off every single footpath, every single road. You just can't get there. Why? Because there's a helicopter flying in way down a ravine to get a body? It does seem a bit odd. Then he says frequently those mountain ranges will be closed off in adverse weather. Really? I've never heard of it. What adverse weather causes matey to what are you saying here, matey? That that heavy wind, heavy rain. There's not much rain there. What adverse weather will close the mountain range like that? You see, he's never been up there, so I don't think he knows what he's talking about. And this is why the more bullshit I smell from this guy, the less I think that he really did have a genuine conversation with a Coast Guard supervision team. But we've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know a lot of you put a lot of faith in this, and I would like to. But the more he blabs, the more I think he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's never been up there. Yeah, he says, yeah, you get bad weather in these mountain areas. They close it off to everything. They just close it. Adverse weather. Okay. That's being closed now to anybody that's not a local. He says, no pass, and you're being turned around at the bottom of those roads and sent back. Got to have some kind of pass. I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, he says, and that was a Saturday morning. Well, that's the interesting bit. If that's the Saturday morning, Jay's body there's a tip off to the Coast Guard, anonymous tip off to the Coast Guard Saturday morning. Saturday morning, they're moving in to find the body, retrieve it. Let's go with him on this. Let's say that all happened Saturday morning. Then why is Chris, when Chris is doing his recce later that Saturday, why is Chris not reporting that he's too late? Guardia Civil have already gone in there, they found it, it's all over. It's the other way around. Chris is on his recce saying he got within 500 meters, and then he's in his car later the day in that day saying, God, it's a hell of a struggle, and they're going to need a specialized team to get in there. Chris is supposed to be in touch with the Guardia Civil all the time. Why is Cipriano Martin not on the blower to Chris saying, "Oh, thanks for your efforts, but this morning we got a tip. It's all over. Found him. Thanks. Bye." On the contrary, Chris then goes home, drives home, yeah, having found Jay on the Saturday, but not having told anyone on the Saturday he found Jay. He goes home, starts blabbing even more about the scenario under which he thinks Jay's body could only be found in the future if some hiker goes down there and needs to be rescued. He's still Saturday evening talking about that. Hours after this expat guy is saying the Coast Guard here got the tip, and everything was sorted out on the Saturday morning. He says Saturday evening. Chris is still talking about hopefully the body will be found sometime in the distant future. I don't know how. It's not adding up. So what we have to conclude here with this expat working for a famous water sports company, what we're going to conclude is either he is talking a load of misinformation, maybe not deliberately. What he said turned out not to be true. Let's just put it mildly. Let's say he's given us a load of misinformation, possibly, or Chris Tenerife has given us a load of misinformation, telling us, oh yeah, the specialist team need to go in there sometime in the future, and it was already over. Guardia Civil already got the tip off and got in there. So either expat boy is lying or giving us misinformation, or Chris is lying or giving us misinformation, or they both are. And that is the challenging prospect here, that both of these guys got it totally wrong. And it was Sunday or Monday. Let us not forget that Chris Pennington, is on record as saying that Jay's body was found and retrieved on the Saturday. He's on record as saying it also happened on the Sunday. It also happened on the Monday. What is baffling to me is that the likes of Chris Pennington, who's in contact with good old Kaz Alice, they're good friends, they're buddies, and they chat about God knows how many things. Into year 3 here, Kaz Alice still hasn't found out and given us a definitive statement from her friend Chris Pennington. We get it. Chris is hiding under his table. He's gone back under his rock. We get that, but Kaz is still in touch with him. How is it here we are in year 3 and Kaz still hasn't got from the horse's mouth on which day, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and exactly when did the Guardia Civil stumble upon, find, get to, see, and look at and say that is Jay Slater's body? When exactly was it? Like I say, Guardi Seville are in constant contact. Well, they were with Chris Pennington. Chris knows the answer. He can give it to Kaz. Kaz can tell us today, if she so wishes, but we never get answers to these questions. Like I say, it's a bit like one of those cults where you can't actually question the leaders, you can't question the narrative, you can pretend to question it, but you can't actually give vital information because somehow that is censored, that mustn't be said. One interesting development that happened yesterday was when Kaz told me that she's in touch with Chris, and Chris is happy to talk to her and tell her all kinds of things. I said, well, maybe Chris would still like to meet because I'm up for that. If we go back way in time, it was Chris that said it wasn't an invite. It was it was instructions basically. Chris said, I am coming with my team, whoever they are, to the Bahamas to interview you. Well, that's fine had I been there, but haven't been there for a long time. And I kind of think that Chris just wanted a bit of a jaunt away from Silvana and a bit of a break in the Bahamas. But obviously it never happened. But my point is, Chris made it clear that he, with his team, would be more than willing, very happy to sit down and interview me. Well, there ain't going to be an interview, Sunshine. There's going to be a debate. We're both going to be talking. We're both going to be questioning. We're both going to be answering. I'm still up for that. And I thought, why not? Neutral venue. So I suggested, just a suggestion to Kaz, I was like, why don't we do this in Sarajevo, Bosnia? Why not? I fly in, CP and his team fly in, and we meet midday at the Cafe Kirov in Sarajevo, Bosnia. Filming, questioning, capturing it all. The debate of the century will fascinate the AG, the FBG, anyone connected with the Jay Slater case. That could happen. And I told Kaz any day, well, after the middle of August, why not? Well, the answer came back from Kaz, well, from Chris via Kaz. No, not going to happen. So I'm a bit disappointed. I mean, he was all up initially for flying across the Atlantic and doing this grand interview, in the Caribbean. But today, as it stands, he doesn't want to make that short flight over to Sarajevo, Bosnia. Now, why did I suggest Sarajevo, Bosnia, and why do you think it was rejected out of hand? I'm going to leave that one to the next video or the next community post. Why would I choose Sarajevo, Bosnia? Hasta luego, adiós, hasta la vista.